Tonight we examine a weapon infamous for its lasting devastation: cluster munitions. These weapons have shaped the landscape of modern warfare, leaving scars that persist long after the fighting ends. Their use has sparked heated debates among military experts, humanitarian organizations, and governments worldwide. Unlike standard bombs, cluster munitions are containers packed with dozens or even hundreds of smaller submunitions, often called bomblets. Each bomblet is designed to detonate on impact, multiplying the destructive potential of a single bomb. When deployed, these munitions burst open mid-air, scattering explosives over areas as large as several football fields. This wide dispersal makes them both militarily effective and highly controversial, as the impact zone is nearly impossible to control. Originally designed to target dispersed enemy troops, vehicles, or infrastructure, cluster munitions often end up causing chaos in civilian neighborhoods, schools, and farmlands, where the line between combatant and non-combatant blurs. The bomblets themselves are unguided, falling indiscriminately and unable to distinguish between military and civilian targets. This randomness increases the risk to innocent people living or working in affected areas. Many bomblets fail to explode on impact, remaining hidden in fields, forests, and even playgrounds. These unexploded submunitions act as de facto landmines, posing a deadly threat for years or even decades after a conflict ends. Countries like Laos and Afghanistan still suffer from these deadly remnants decades later, with entire communities forced to adapt their daily lives to avoid marked danger zones and contaminated land. Demining is a painstaking, dangerous, and expensive process. Civilians, especially children, are at constant risk, as curiosity or necessity can lead them into harm's way. This dual threat, immediate destruction and lingering danger, makes cluster munitions uniquely feared. Survivors often face lifelong injuries, trauma, and the loss of homes or livelihoods. Their legacy turns former battlefields into deadly traps for generations, rendering fertile land unusable and stalling recovery long after peace is declared. It's this persistent, indiscriminate threat that has led much of the world to condemn and ban their use, with international treaties and grassroots movements pushing for a future free from cluster munitions. In the summer of 2025, the Middle East's fragile peace was shattered in a single night. Iran unleashed a massive barrage of over 500 ballistic missiles, targeting cities and strategic sites across Israel. The world watched in shock as the night sky over the region was illuminated by streaks of fire, marking one of the most intense missile attacks in modern history. For the first time, at least 3 of these missiles carried cluster munition warheads, an ominous escalation. These warheads struck 7 cities, spreading terror and chaos across 18 separate locations. The attacks were not just military strikes. They were designed to instill fear and confusion among civilians, disrupting daily life on an unprecedented scale. The first attack on June 19th saw bomblets rain down on Or Yehuda and nearby towns, indiscriminately hitting streets, parks, and homes. Residents awoke to explosions and the terrifying sound of submunitions scattering across their neighborhoods, leaving destruction in their wake. Visual evidence soon emerged. Photos of unexploded bomblets lodged in apartment patios and playgrounds confirmed the use of these banned weapons. The presence of these deadly remnants in everyday spaces made the threat feel ever present. While fatalities were miraculously avoided, the psychological impact was immediate and profound. Families huddled in bomb shelters, children clung to parents, and the sense of safety that once defined home was shattered. Nowhere felt safe, not even the most familiar places. Analysts quickly identified the submunitions as types Iran has deployed since 2014, weapons notorious for their ability to terrorize civilian populations. These were not precision-guided munitions but tools of fear, designed to maximize psychological trauma rather than achieve military objectives. Air raid sirens became a constant haunting presence. Schools and playgrounds closed, businesses shuttered, and daily life ground to a halt as fear and uncertainty spread through every community. The threat wasn't just the initial blast, but the hidden danger of unexploded bomblets lurking in parks, streets, and even backyards. Bomb squads worked tirelessly, but the fear of what might be left behind lingered long after the sirens faded. Iran's message was unmistakable. It could strike at the very heart of Israeli society, reaching deep into civilian life and upending the sense of normalcy. This marked a terrifying escalation, bringing indiscriminate and internationally condemned weapons into the daily lives of ordinary people, leaving behind shattered homes and broken communities. The attacks paralyzed entire cities, leaving streets deserted and a legacy of fear and uncertainty that would haunt residents for months to come. Cluster munitions had become a tool of psychological warfare, their impact measured not just in physical destruction, but in the deep scars left on the minds of those who survived. The horror of cluster munitions led to the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions, banning their use, production and stockpiling. Over 100 countries have signed, agreeing that the civilian harm outweighs any military benefit. But major powers, including Iran, Israel, the US, Russia and China, refuse to join. They argue these weapons are necessary for defense despite global condemnation. For Iran, cluster munitions are a deterrent against stronger adversaries. Israel maintains ambiguity but sees them as vital for security. The US, while restricting use, hasn't joined the ban, undermining efforts to eliminate these weapons worldwide. The missile war of 2025 was set in motion by a dramatic escalation in April 2024, a month that would be remembered as a turning point in Middle Eastern history. Tensions had been simmering for years, but the events of April brought them to a dangerous boil, setting the stage for a new era of open conflict. On April 13th, Iran launched its first direct assault on Israel, firing over 300 drones and missiles in a massive coordinated attack. This was in retaliation for an Israeli airstrike on Iran's consulate in Damascus, which had killed several senior Iranian officials. The scale and intensity of Iran's response shocked the world and marked a significant escalation in the long-standing shadow war between the two nations. The attack was designed to overwhelm Israel's sophisticated air defenses, saturating the skies with projectiles. But with rapid support from the US, UK, France and Jordan, Israel's multi-layered defense systems managed to intercept an astonishing 99% of the incoming threats, demonstrating both technological prowess and international cooperation. Still, a handful of missiles slipped through the defensive shield, striking Israeli military bases. These impacts caused significant damage to infrastructure and equipment, but remarkably, there were no fatalities reported among Israeli personnel. This unprecedented direct attack marked a historic turning point. Iran had demonstrated not only the will, but also the capability to strike Israel openly, shattering previous assumptions about the limits of their confrontation. Intelligence reports soon revealed that some of the missiles may have carried cluster warheads, a chilling indication that future attacks could be even more devastating and indiscriminate, targeting both military and civilian areas. Around the globe, governments and citizens alike watched in alarm. The world saw this as a chilling rehearsal for the more destructive and unpredictable attacks that might follow, raising fears of a wider regional war. The era of direct, high-stakes confrontation had begun, ushering in a period of uncertainty and heightened alert across the Middle East and beyond. Iran's cluster attacks drew global condemnation, but accusations of hypocrisy quickly followed. Tehran points to Israel's own history, especially its use of cluster bombs in Lebanon in 2006, which left deadly remnants still harming civilians. Critics also cite Israeli operations in Gaza, fueling skepticism about its moral high ground. Recent Israeli strikes in Iran, reportedly causing civilian casualties, further complicate the narrative. Both sides justify their actions as self-defense, creating a cycle of retaliation and blame. The international community struggles to mediate as each side accuses the other of war crimes. This toxic dynamic leaves little room for diplomacy or de-escalation. The United States is deeply entangled in the Iran-Israel conflict as Israel's chief ally and military backer. American support was crucial in intercepting Iranian missiles in 2024, reinforcing its commitment to Israeli security. This alliance gives Israel a strategic edge but draws criticism for emboldening aggressive actions. Many argue U.S. policy undermines its credibility as a peace broker and perpetuates the cycle of violence. The U.S. refusal to ban cluster munitions further complicates its position, weakening its moral authority. When Washington condemns Iran's use of these weapons, critics point to America's own stockpiles. This double standard makes building a global coalition against cluster munitions far more difficult. The terror of cluster munitions lingers long after the explosions stop. In 2025, Israeli cities faced a new threat: unexploded bomblets scattered in parks, streets, and homes. These small, unstable explosives turned daily life into a minefield, instilling constant fear. Parents warned children not to touch strange objects. Communities became prisoners in their own neighborhoods. Bomb disposal teams worked tirelessly, but the danger could never be fully eliminated. The psychological toll was immense, safety and normalcy shattered for entire populations. This is why over 100 nations have banned these weapons. The humanitarian cost is simply too high. Unexploded ordnance threatens civilians, aid workers, and peacekeepers alike. Cluster munitions ensure that the trauma of war endures for generations. The use of cluster munitions in the Iran-Israel conflict marks a dangerous new phase. What began as proxy warfare has escalated into direct, indiscriminate attacks with global implications. Each strike risks triggering a wider regional war, potentially drawing in other nations and threatening global stability. A major escalation could target nuclear sites or vital infrastructure, with catastrophic consequences for the world economy. Iran's willingness to use these weapons sets a troubling precedent, lowering the threshold for their use elsewhere. The world watches anxiously, hoping diplomacy can break the cycle of violence. The stakes are higher than ever. One miscalculation could plunge the region into disaster. In this volatile moment, the need for restraint and international action has never been more urgent.